Ever have those moments where your thoughts just feel relentless, like a hamster wheel in your brain just spinning and spinning? It's exhausting.
Oh, absolutely. That feeling of being constantly, bombarded by inner chatter, that's something so many people experience.
Well, in this deep dive, we're looking at an idea that suggests the real source of that mental overwhelm and maybe a lot of our anxiety and stress.
Mm.
It isn't actually what's happening around us.
Right. Something much closer to home.
Exactly. We're diving into the insights from Joseph Nguyen's book, Don't Believe Everything You Think. The subtitle is pretty direct. Why You're Thinking is the beginning and end of suffering.
Mm-hmm. A bold claim.
It is. And if you listening have ever felt genuinely, stuck in negative thought patterns, that constant loop of worry or self-criticism,
Yeah.
then this exploration could offer, well, a really liberating shift in perspective potentially,
We're hoping to unpack how your personal experience of reality is actually constructed.
and how understanding that might lead to, significantly more inner peace and maybe even joy.
So, our mission today really is to extract the fundamental understandings from Nguyen's work, specifically focusing on the nature of our thinking and its profound influence on our well-being.
Okay, let's unpack this then. The book kicks off by proposing something pretty fundamental, that we essentially live in a world built out of our thoughts,
Mm.
rather than like some absolute external reality.
Yeah, and this echoes the work of Sydney Banks, who gets referenced in the book. The central idea is that it's our individual perceptions shaping the reality we experience.
And Nguyen uses this really relatable scenario. Imagine you're sitting in a coffee shop
Right.
and you're completely consumed by stress.
Right.
Maybe feeling like you're the only one struggling while everyone else seems, I don't know, totally fine.
Yeah, and meanwhile, the person sitting right next to you could be just calmly enjoying their coffee, taking in the atmosphere, feeling completely content.
Same place, same noise, same people,
Yeah.
but two completely different inner worlds. It just highlights how our own thoughts are like painting our individual experience of the exact same situation.
Mhm.
That example really lands the point, I think.
It really does. Our feelings aren't a direct result of external events themselves,
Uh-huh.
but rather our interpretation, our thinking about those events.
Okay.
The book gives another common one, hating your job.
Oh, yeah. Been there.
Right. You might be physically at home, maybe relaxing with family, but mentally. You're still there at work, stewing, replaying stuff, totally lost in thoughts about the job.
And in that moment, even though, the actual circumstances are fine, you're with family,
Right.
your inner experience is completely miserable. All because of these thoughts about work, even when you're not physically there. It's kind of wild when you think about it.
It really challenges that assumption that external things make us feel a certain way. So Nguyen poses this really powerful question. Who would you be without that thought that you hated your job?
Ooh, okay. And when you really sit with that, like let the answers come up without jumping on them,
Hmm.
what tends to emerge?
Well, often it's feelings like happiness, peace, maybe a sense of freedom, lightness.
Yeah, lightness.
That immediate shift, that lightness, it suggests that the problem, the suffering, wasn't inherent in the job itself.
But in the thought about it,
Exactly. It was like a layer of thought obscuring this natural well-being underneath.
which leads us straight to the book's central thesis. The root cause of our psychological suffering. It's our own thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I can almost hear people pushing back a bit here because our experience of reality feels so real, so tangible.
Right.
When something difficult happens, it feels completely natural, even appropriate, to feel upset.
And that's totally understandable. The feelings are undeniably real, no question. But the book suggests our thinking acts like this intermediary.
Like a lens.
Exactly, a lens through which we interpret events and then generate our emotional responses.
Yeah.
If we can start to see that connection.
Then maybe we see where we have some leverage, some agency in shifting our experience. Okay, so if thinking is the key, let's dig into this distinction the book makes between thoughts and thinking, because they're presented as quite different.
Yes, this is a really crucial distinction Nguyen makes. He describes thoughts, the noun, as these sort of energetic, mental raw materials.
Okay.
They just appear in our minds, often spontaneously. Coming from something beyond our conscious control, the book calls it the universe, or infinite intelligence, this life force.
To just happen. We don't do thoughts.
Exactly. They're a noun, not a verb. They just arise.
Right, like little mental blips or sensations that just pop up. Okay, so what's thinking then?
Thinking, the verb, is the active engagement with those thoughts.
Wow.
It involves effort, willpower. It's when we grab hold of a thought and start to, analyze it, judge it, spin stories around it, run with it.
And that's where the suffering kicks in, according to the book.
That's the idea. The initial thought itself isn't necessarily the issue. It's the interaction, the engagement, the thinking process.
So it's not the ingredients, it's the cooking.
That's a great way to put it. And the book even suggests that positive feelings, peace, love, joy, they don't come from positive thinking.
Oh.
They're seen as our natural state, our baseline, that emerges when we're not actively tangled up in that effortful thinking process.
Wow. Okay. That really goes against the grain of a lot of self-help advice, doesn't it? The whole power of positive thinking thing.
It does, and the book uses a helpful example. If I ask you, say, how much money you'd ideally like to earn,
Okay.
the first thought, the number that pops up, it's probably neutral, maybe even a bit exciting.
Yeah, it could be.
But then comes the thinking about it, the self-doubt, the how could I ever do that, the comparison, the judgment. That's what brings the negative feeling.
I see. So the initial thought opens a door, maybe, but the thinking process often slams it shut with limiting beliefs.
You got it. So thoughts create potential. Thinking often destroys it by adding judgment and limitation.
It's not the raw stuff of our minds that's toxic, but the constant stirring and analyzing that leads to the suffering.
Precisely. The book actually includes a useful chart contrasting thoughts and thinking.
Oh, yeah. What does it highlight?
Well, it points out things like thoughts come from the universe or this deeper intelligence, while thinking is more ego-driven.
Okay.
Thoughts feel light, expansive, creative. Thinking feels heavy, restrictive, often destructive. Thoughts connect us to feelings of aliveness, love, potential. Thinking generates stress, fear, separation, and takes real effort.
That chart sounds like it lays it out pretty clearly.
It does. It provides a good visual for that core distinction.
Okay, so that comparison really sharpens the focus, which brings us to this idea that maybe our constant pursuit of positive thinking might actually be, well, kind of missing the point.
That's what the book argues. It contends that negative emotions primarily bubble up when we are actively, effortfully thinking.
Right.
Now, it does acknowledge, of course, that some negative emotions have survival value. Fear in a truly dangerous spot is useful.
Sure, you don't want to not think if a bus is heading towards you.
Exactly. But in our day-to-day lives, the constant effort to force positive thoughts isn't seen as the fundamental solution here.
And this ties back to that idea that our natural state, our baseline, is actually positive.
Yes. Nguyen suggests an exercise. Recall a moment of really profound joy or love in your life, like peak experience stuff,
Okay.
and then try to pinpoint what specific thoughts were running through your head at that exact instant. What do you reckon most people find?
Well, based on where this is going, probably not much conscious thought at all. Or maybe the feeling came first, and any thought like, this is amazing, came after.
That's exactly the common experience people report. The feeling, the joy, the love often precedes any deliberate thought about it, like gratitude or happiness.
Interesting.
And this supports the idea that our inherent state is actually one of joy, love, maybe even wonder, freedom, gratitude. You see it in babies, right?
Yeah.
Before the world conditions them with interpretations.
Yeah, that default state of openness. So the book is saying that the act of thinking, that effortful process, actually pulls us away from this natural state.
That's the core argument. The more we get entangled in thinking, the more intense our negative feelings can become.
So it's less about what specific negative thought we're having.
And more about the fact that we're caught in the thinking process itself. That process is what generates the friction, the suffering.
So understanding the process is
Yes.
key, not just managing the content. Okay. Now, you mentioned the book briefly touches on something called the 3 principles. What's that about?
Yeah, these are concepts from Sydney Banks, presented as the fundamental building blocks of our entire human experience. They are universal mind, universal consciousness, and universal thought.
Okay, 3 universals. Let's break them down. Universal mind.
Universal mind is described as like the intelligence behind everything, the life force animating all things.
So not just human minds.
No, everything. It's what makes an acorn grow into an oak, keeps planets orbiting, helps our bodies heal without us consciously directing it. It's seen as the source of all thoughts and everything else.
Wow.
And the idea is when we're aligned with this universal mind, we naturally feel things like wholeness, love, joy, inspiration.
And thinking gets in the way.
Effortful, ego-driven thinking can obscure that connection, yeah. Leading to feelings of separation, lack, negativity.
Got it. Okay, second one, universal consciousness.
That's the awareness itself, the capacity that allows us to experience existence at all. Without consciousness, we wouldn't be aware of ourselves, our thoughts, the world. Nothing would be knowable.
So it's like the space in which everything appears.
Kind of, yeah. It brings things into our perception.
All right. And the third, universal thought.
This is the raw material, the energy, the potential for creation. It's our innate ability to think, to form ideas, to take the formless energy from the universal mind and give it form in our experience.
So mind is the source, consciousness is the awareness, and thought is the creative potential we use.
That's a good way to summarize how they interact to create our reality. And it seems the key to easing suffering, according to this model, lies in recognizing our connection to universal mind and minimizing the interference from our personal, effortful thinking.
Right. Which brings us back to the practical question.
Yeah.
If thinking, especially getting caught in thinking, is a primary source of suffering, how do we do less of it?
Right.
How do we stop? Or maybe minimize it?
Exactly. And the book clarifies it's not necessarily about achieving some state of permanent thought-free blankness. That's probably unrealistic.
Okay, good.
It's more about reducing the time we spend lost in thought, absorbed by it.
And how do we do that? Does the book offer techniques?
Interestingly, the primary technique, if you can call it that, is simply awareness. Becoming aware that you are thinking and recognizing that this thinking process itself is the source of the unpleasant feeling.
So noticing it.
Just noticing it, yeah. That awareness in itself creates a kind of detachment. It allows the thoughts to be seen as thoughts rather than absolute reality, and then they tend to pass more easily.
The book uses that analogy, right? The bowl of muddy water.
Yes, exactly. If you've got this bowl of murky water and you want it to become clear, what do you do?
Well, my first instinct might be to stir it or try to filter it somehow.
Right. But the book points out the most effective way is often just to let it sit, undisturbed.
And the sediment just naturally settles.
Precisely. The water clears up all by itself. And our minds are seen as functioning similarly. If we stop the constant churning, the trying to fix or manage every thought, things naturally quiet down. Clarity emerges.
That's the idea. Less struggle, more clarity.
There's another analogy, too, isn't there, about quicksand?
Yeah, that's a powerful one. Thinking, especially anxious thinking, is like quicksand. The more you fight it, the more you struggle and resist.
The deeper you sink into the negativity.
Exactly. The way out is counterintuitive. Stop struggling. Let go. Trust that your natural buoyancy, your innate wisdom, your connection to that deeper intelligence will allow you to float back to the surface. So it's really about releasing that internal battle with our own minds. The book also mentions it's okay, it's normal to cycle between thinking and non-thinking states.
Right, absolutely. We're human. We live in the world. We're going to get caught up in thought sometimes. That's just part of the experience.
Sure.
The key isn't to beat yourself up when you notice you're thinking. It's more about remembering that the underlying state of peace, that clear water, is always there.
Like the sun behind the clouds.
Exactly. It's always accessible, even if it's temporarily obscured.
And just knowing that, just remembering that possibility can bring a huge sense of relief in itself. Okay, but here's a big question I imagine listeners might have. How can we possibly function, achieve things, solve problems if we're not constantly thinking? We usually equate thinking with being effective.
That's a really common and valid concern it feels like thinking is doing. But the book flips the question. It asks, what kind of thoughts, if any, are actually present when you're performing at your absolute peak, when you're totally absorbed in that state of flow?
Well, when I think about being really in the zone, doing something I enjoy or I'm good at, time sort of disappears. And I'm not consciously analyzing every single step. It feels more intuitive, automatic almost.
Precisely. The book argues that peak performance, flow states, often arise from a state of minimal or even no conscious, effortful thinking.
Like athletes being in the zone.
Exactly. Or artists completely lost in their work. They aren't micromanaging every brushstroke or calculation in their head. There's a sense of effortless action, of being guided.
And the book mentions that Japanese concept, mushin.
Yes, mushin, mind without mind. A mind free from distractions like random thoughts, anger, fear, ego, allowing for spontaneous, perfect action without hesitation.
Wow.
And it notes that even thinking after practice can sometimes mess up an athlete's next performance.
Right, overthinking it.
Yeah, and the same applies in life more broadly. Hesitation, self-doubt, insecurity, these often come from that layer of overanalysis, from thinking too much. We tend to function best when we tap into that deeper, quieter space.
Okay, that makes sense for performance.
Yeah.
But what about our goals,
Yeah.
our ambitions? If we reduced thinking, won't we just lose our drives, become passive?
Another really important concern. The book addresses this by making a distinction between goals that come from inspiration versus those born out of desperation.
Okay, inspiration versus desperation.
Yeah.
What's the difference in how they feel or arise?
Goals from desperation often feel heavy. They come from a sense of lack, scarcity, maybe urgency. There's a feeling of, I have to do this, often to get something external, validation, security, whatever.
Like needing that promotion to feel worthy, or needing a certain amount of money to feel safe.
Exactly. There often means goals, steps towards something else we think will make us happy. And even if we achieve them, that underlying feeling of lack often just finds a new target.
Okay, so what about inspiration-based goals?
They feel different, lighter,
Yeah.
expansive, like you're being moved or called to do something. There's a sense of abundance, possibility. It's more about I want to or even I get to.
Less push, more pull.
Beautifully put, yes. They're often end goals in themselves. The doing is fulfilling, and pursuing them tends to generate feelings of wholeness and satisfaction along the way, not just at the finish line.
So the energy behind the goal is completely different.
Completely. And the book's point is that reducing the noise of desperate, anxious thinking actually allows us to hear the quieter signals of inspiration. It lets us reconnect with our true nature and create from that place.
And it offers that question to help access that, right?
Yes, that powerful question. If I had infinite money, already traveled the world, had no fear, and didn't receive any recognition for what I do, what would I do? What would I create?
That really cuts through the noise, doesn't it? Gets past the ego needs and societal pressures. Okay, so if we're not relying on that constant, effortful thinking for direction, what guides us? The book talks about intuition, right?
Exactly. As the chatter of thinking quiets down, we become more attuned to our intuition, that gut feeling, that inner knowing, that inherent wisdom we all possess.
That little voice inside.
That's one way it shows up. The book really emphasizes that ultimately, only you know what's truly right for you. External advice has its place, but the deepest guidance, it comes from within.
And we probably all had experiences where we ignored that feeling and, well, regretted it later.
For sure. Intuition is like this internal GPS, always trying to guide us, even if the route looks illogical or unexpected sometimes.
And the book advises not to seek too much external validation for it, because society might not get it yet.
Right. Often, intuitive insights are ahead of the curve. Waiting for mainstream approval can mean missing the boat entirely. It requires trusting that inner sense, even when it doesn't perfectly align with conventional wisdom.
And the book suggests we often do know what to do deep down. It's just that fear and self-doubt, fueled by overthinking, create this fog of uncertainty.
Precisely. It clouds our access to that inner knowing. And it links back to the idea of universal intelligence, that we have access to this vast wellspring of insight. But our own thinking often acts like a bottleneck.
Okay, so how do we start to actually follow this intuition more consistently?
Well, the book connects that state of non-thinking, that flow state, directly to having an open channel to this infinite intelligence or the universe or God, whatever term resonates.
And thinking blocks that channel.
Effortful, fear-based thinking tends to sever or constrict that connection, yeah.
Yeah.
So following intuition really boils down to learning to trust that inner wisdom as it arises in the quieter moments.
And what does that feel like typically when you're living more from that intuitive space?
The book describes it as often feeling like you're not really doing anything effortfully. Things seem to happen through you or for you.
Miracles, almost.
Yeah, synchronicities, things falling into place with a sense of ease. There might be a warped sense of time, feelings of abundance, joy, peace. It feels more like surfing than swimming upstream.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
But realistically, the book acknowledges we slip back into overthinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially when we feel that urge to figure it all out.
Oh, absolutely. It's a constant dance. That need to control, to mentally manage everything is deeply ingrained for many of us.
So what's the key insight to remember then?
It's realizing we don't need to control everything. Trusting intuition allows life to unfold for us, rather than feeling like we have to force everything by us.
So we can't control external events.
But we can influence our experience by choosing whether to get lost in excessive thinking about them.
And it mentions using our imagination for the what we desire.
And trusting the universe or that deeper intelligence for the how. Let go of needing to map out every single step.
How does intuition usually speak? Is it always a booming voice?
Not usually. The book says it often comes as a quiet thought, but one that feels different. It has a sense of knowingness, a certainty, even if it goes against logic.
That feeling of just knowing.
Exactly. And fear is often the biggest block, right? Because intuition often leads us into the unknown, off the well-trodden path.
Which is scary for the thinking mind.
Totally. But cultivating non-thinking allows us to feel that fear but move forward anyway, accessing possibilities beyond what our logical mind could conceive.
Okay, this feels connected to the next idea. Creating space for miracles. What does the book mean by space?
It draws on this principle that creation needs emptiness to arise from. It uses that classic Zen story, right? The scholar visiting the master.
Oh, the teacup story.
Yeah, the master keeps pouring tea into the scholar's already full cup until it overflows. The point being,
If your mind, your cup, is already full of old ideas, beliefs, thinking, there's no room for anything new to come in. No space for insight or miracles.
Exactly. And non-thinking, letting go of that constant mental chatter, is what creates that inner space. The book is examples. Athletes need rest days for muscles to grow. Edison took naps to get ideas. Einstein played the violin. These weren't just breaks. They were ways of creating mental space.
Allowing for receptivity, not just constant output. So it's not about trying harder, necessarily, but about creating the conditions for insight to land. The book outlines a kind of process for this, doesn't it? For inviting those divine downloads.
It does, yeah. A simple 3-step guideline when you're feeling stuck or seeking guidance.
What are the steps?
First, awareness. Recognize that any negative feeling you have is coming from your thinking about the situation.
Okay, step 1, own the source.
Second, surrender. Consciously let go of trying to manually figure it all out. Release the need to control the how and the when. Trust your inner wisdom, that deeper intelligence, to handle the details.
Let go of the mental reins.
Exactly. And third, magnify the feeling. Deliberately focus on and amplify feelings you do want: love, peace, joy, gratitude. Regardless of the current situation, feel them as if the solution is already here.
So it's awareness, surrender, and then cultivating the desired feeling state. It feels like a real shift from micromanaging with the conscious mind
to trusting and collaborating with a much larger intelligence.
Yeah, it's a profound shift. And the book's conclusion really drives this home, doesn't it?
It really does, with that powerful core message.
That you are always, always just one thought away from peace, love, and joy, simply by shifting out of thinking and into that space of awareness.
It's offered as a constant source of hope. No matter how bad things seem, that potential for peace is right here, always available. And realizing this, truly getting it, can permanently change your perspective.
The book also anticipates that reaction some might have, that it sounds, well, almost too simple.
Yeah, it addresses that directly, suggesting that this feeling is often just the mind, the ego, trying to hold on to complexity because simplicity feels threatening to its control.
But truth is often simple and felt deeply, not just intellectually understood.
Exactly. And the final nudge is really about trusting that inner resonance, that inner wisdom.
Over all the noise from external opinions, societal pressures, even our own conditioned thinking, trust that everything you truly need is already inside you.
And the suggestion is just to keep practicing, keep noticing when you're thinking, keep letting it go, keep returning to that quieter space, and just see what happens. More ease, more flow, more miracles.
And it makes that interesting point, too, that as you start to embody this more, people around you will notice.
Yeah, that inner shift radiates outwards. It naturally sparks curiosity in others when they see that change in you.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into don't believe everything you think, maybe a final thought for everyone listening to consider. Consider right now, what cup of persistent thinking, what familiar mental pattern might you be holding on to so tightly that it could actually be preventing something truly remarkable, maybe even miraculous, from flowing into your life?